They called her the woman who sued McDonald's for spilling her own coffee. They laughed at her. They made jokes on TV, in newspapers, even in late-night shows. But what if I told you? The real story was never about spilled coffee. It was about pain, negligence, and the price one woman paid for justice. This is the story of Stella Liebeck versus McDonald's Corporation, a courtroom battle that changed consumer law forever, and one of the most misunderstood lawsuits in American history. Meet Stella Liebeck, a 79-year-old grandmother from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Soft-spoken, kind, and living a simple life. She wasn't rich. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't an activist. She was just a grandmother who loved spending time with her family. In February 1992, Stella was sitting in the passenger seat of her grandson's car. They had just gone through a McDonald's drive-thru. She ordered a simple cup of coffee, the same way millions of Americans did every morning. Black coffee. No sugar. No cream. Her grandson parked the car so she could add cream and sugar comfortably. And that was the moment that changed everything. As Stella removed the lid to pour in the sugar, the coffee, served at nearly 190 degrees Fahrenheit, spilled directly onto her lap. Within seconds, her skin began to burn. The pain was unbearable. Her cotton sweatpants absorbed the coffee and held the heat against her skin like a trap. In that brief moment, Stella Liebeck suffered third-degree burns on her thighs, buttocks, and groin. It wasn't a minor spill. It was a catastrophic injury, one that would require skin grafts, 8 days in the hospital, and 2 years of recovery. Most of us can't imagine what third-degree burns look like, but in court, doctors showed photos. Her skin was literally charred. The burn area covered 16% of her body. She couldn't walk properly. She couldn't live normally. And all of it came from a cup of coffee that McDonald's served to millions of customers every day. At first, Stella didn't want to sue. She didn't want fame or money. All she wanted was help paying her medical bills, which totaled about $20,000. She reached out to McDonald's and asked them for that amount. They offered her $800. $800 for burns that would scar her body and her life forever. That's when Stella decided to take a stand. Not because she wanted to get rich, but because she wanted accountability. If this could happen to her, it could happen to anyone. So she hired an attorney, Reed Morgan, a man who had handled product liability cases before. Together, they filed a lawsuit against McDonald's restaurants. At the time, no one, not even Stella, knew that this simple case would grow into a national controversy. One that would pit an elderly woman against one of the world's most powerful corporations. When Stella filed her lawsuit, she wasn't asking for millions. She simply wanted the company to lower the temperature of its coffee and help pay her medical expenses. But McDonald's had a different plan. They had teams of lawyers, endless resources, and a reputation to protect. So instead of settling quietly, they chose to fight. What they didn't realize was that this courtroom battle would expose something far bigger, a secret pattern of negligence that had been hidden behind every steaming cup of McDonald's coffee. From day one, McDonald's lawyers portrayed Stella as careless. They claimed she spilled the coffee on herself, that it was her own fault, and that coffee is supposed to be hot. To the media, it sounded like common sense. But inside the courtroom, the truth was about to unfold, and it was far from what the headlines suggested. During discovery, Stella's attorney requested McDonald's internal documents. What they found stunned everyone. McDonald's had a strict corporate policy to keep its coffee between 180 and 190 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature hot enough to cause third-degree burns in just 2 to 7 seconds. Experts testified that at that temperature, coffee is not safe for human consumption. It's not even drinkable without cooling down first. So why did McDonald's keep it that hot? Because they believed customers wanted their coffee to stay hot for longer while they drove. In other words, convenience over safety. Then came the evidence that turned the courtroom silent. McDonald's had over 700 reports of people being burned by their coffee. Some of them children, some of them elderly, long before Stella Liebeck's accident. But instead of lowering the temperature, McDonald's treated it as a cost of doing business. In one internal document, a McDonald's quality control manager admitted that the company knew their coffee was not fit for consumption at the serving temperature. That line, "not fit for consumption," echoed through the courtroom like thunder. McDonald's defense team stood firm. They argued that millions of customers bought coffee daily without injury. So clearly, it wasn't dangerous. They blamed Stella for being careless, for placing the cup between her knees, for removing the lid. But Stella's attorney countered with logic and compassion. He reminded the jury that people make mistakes, and corporations have a duty to protect their customers from the consequences of those mistakes when possible. It wasn't about the spill. It was about the temperature. It was about foreseeable harm. When Stella took the stand, she didn't cry or shout. She spoke softly. Her voice trembled as she described the pain, the moment her skin began to peel, the surgeries, the scars, and the humiliation of being mocked for something that nearly killed her. She said, "I never wanted this. I just wanted McDonald's to listen." The courtroom was silent. Even the jurors looked away, shaken. It was August 1994. The courtroom was tense. After 7 days of testimony and 4 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered its verdict. They found McDonald's 80% at fault and Stella 20% at fault for her own injuries. They awarded her $200,000 in compensatory damages, later reduced to $160,000 because of shared fault. And then came the shocking part. The punitive damages, $2.7 million, roughly equivalent to 2 days of McDonald's coffee sales. It wasn't about the money. It was a message. Even the biggest corporations must value human safety above profit. The verdict hit like a thunderclap. The media exploded. "Woman wins millions for spilling coffee on herself," screamed the headlines. Talk shows mocked her. Comedians made jokes. News anchors rolled their eyes. Almost no one mentioned the third-degree burns, the skin grafts, or the 700 previous complaints. The truth was buried under punchlines. The story had been twisted, from one of corporate negligence to one of supposed greed and absurdity. Across America, people scoffed at what they thought was another frivolous lawsuit. They didn't know the facts. They only knew the headlines. Reporters simplified the case, TV shows exaggerated it, and soon Stella Liebeck became the punchline of late-night jokes. But those who had seen the courtroom footage, the documents, and the testimony knew the truth. This wasn't greed. This was courage. After the trial, the judge reduced the punitive damages from $2.7 million to about $480,000, bringing the total settlement to around $640,000. Later, both parties reached a confidential out-of-court settlement believed to be less than $600,000. McDonald's quietly changed its policy. Many of its restaurants lowered coffee temperatures to safer levels, around 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And because of that one case, thousands of people in the years that followed were spared from severe burns. For Stella, it wasn't a victory parade. The publicity was brutal. She was harassed, ridiculed, and called greedy by strangers, all for standing up for herself. She lived the rest of her life quietly, staying out of the public eye. Her family said the scars never fully healed, neither the physical ones nor the emotional ones. But to lawyers, students, and consumer advocates, Stella Liebeck became a symbol. A reminder that justice isn't always loud, and truth doesn't always make headlines. Today, law students around the world study Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants as a landmark case in product liability and consumer safety. It taught corporations that just hot enough can mean too dangerous. It reminded juries that sometimes ordinary people need protection from the power of profit-driven systems. The case even inspired the 2011 documentary Hot Coffee, which revealed how distorted media coverage shaped public opinion against Stella and against justice itself. So, the next time you hear someone say, "Oh, that lady who sued McDonald's for hot coffee," remember this: she didn't sue because the coffee was hot. She sued because it was dangerously hot, because the company knew it, and because no one listened until she spoke up. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from the powerful. Sometimes, it comes from the quiet courage of one person who refuses to stay silent. This wasn't the story of greed. It was the story of accountability, of truth versus perception, of an elderly woman who stood alone in court and won, not just for herself, but for every consumer who deserves to be safe. Stella Liebeck never asked for fame, but her case became one of the most important reminders in modern history, that even the smallest voice can echo louder than a billion-dollar brand. This was the case that changed everything. This was Liebeck versus McDonald's. That's it for today, and if you enjoyed this trial and want to see more heartwarming, funny, and unforgettable moments from different courtrooms around the states, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a case.